Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ignition Community Live. This is episode number 33, the Ignition Platform Demo. My name is Travis Cox. I'm the co-director of sales engineering here at Inductive Automation, and I'll be presenting the webinar today, and I'm really pleased to be here today. Our team, the sales engineering team, we're the solution architect team here at IA, and one of our jobs is to provide technical demonstrations of Ignition. And today, we want to show you a really good platform demo that gives you a good understanding of what Ignition can do, outlining a lot of the big features and the ease of use of the product. So I'm really excited to get into it, but before we get into the technical demo, for those of you who may be new to inductive automation and to our product Ignition, I feel it'd be good to give a little brief introduction to the product. So Ignition is our software product. It is the new SCADA platform of the future because it's the industry's first database-centric, cross-platform, web-deployed industrial application platform for SCADA, HMI, IIoT, MES, and a lot more. Simply put, Ignition is a development toolkit that allows you to build any kind of industrial application that you like. It is a single unified, unlimited platform for HMI, SCADA, and MES. It's unlike any other SCADA solution because it empowers users with these unique features. It has an unlimited licensing model, so you can buy a server license for whatever functions you want, and the use of that is completely unlimited. Unlimited tags, screens, clients, device connections, projects, and more. It has a server-centric web deployment model, so we install Ignition on a central system, and from there we can connect out to all of the different sources of data. And Ignition can connect to really anything, any kinds of PLC or other systems. And we can ultimately get data out to a lot of people on any device, whether that's their PC, their mobile devices, phones, TVs, and more. Ignition is fully cross-platform, can run on any flavor of Windows, Linux, or Mac, and is built on open standard technologies so that we don't lock you into anything proprietary. We kind of allow you to take advantage of putting data into databases or get that data to other systems easily, integrate with other systems, and also just allow you to use modern technologies, especially from the IT realm. We're going to talk more about the modularity in a minute, but it is a modular platform, and that's really key. You can think of the Ignition platform much like your phone's a platform to install applications. Ignition's a platform where you can install modules and extend the functionality. But one of the big unique things about it is that it comes with its development environment, and it really has a rapid development and deployment model. And the designers included, it allows you to in a single environment build everything that you want to build, and ultimately realize the solution that you want to bring to the table. With the modularity, this is a diagram that shows the software stack of Ignition. As you can see here, the Ignition platform provides a lot of core functionality. It has down here all the drivers to different PLCs. It has connectivity to OPC and databases, has the tag system, it has alarming, has a lot of this core functionality you could take advantage of. But the modules above add specific functionality. And we built Ignition to be modular for two reasons. One is you can pick and choose the functions that you want. So if you just want to use Ignition as an historian, you can just get the tag historian module. If you want to use it for just visualization, you can use perspective or vision. But if you'd like it to use it for a full SCADA solution, you can get a combination of multiple modules and ultimately build out the system you want. And the second reason we built Ignition modular is we can't predict the future. We want to have a platform that we can scale, that we can continue to add on to over time. So as new technologies come out, we can easily introduce a new module, you can plug into the platform, and you can easily take advantage of those new features. And everything is built, again, with that unified platform, the unified designer. So it's very, very simple from an installation standpoint, simple to upgrade in the future, and to continue to scale that system up as you go forward. We offer a lot of core modules within Ignition for visualization, historian and logic, the alarm notification, and of course, connectivity and enterprise functionality. We also have a couple of partners who provide modules in certain areas in IIoT. That's CirrusLink providing modules for MQTT and for cloud connectivity. And we have Sepasoft for providing MES modules. And so the idea is you can pick and choose modules you want. You can deploy Ignition to your site wherever you want to have functionality, and ultimately you can build out your industrial application easily. So Ignition is server software, and it acts as a hub for everything on your plant floor to achieve total system integration. So no matter what brand, model, or platform, it talks to your plant floor equipment just as naturally as it talks to SQL databases, and it really bridges the gap between IT and OT. So we can connect all of your PLCs and devices through OPC. We have built-in drivers for all the major PLCs. We'll see that in a bit. We also can support connecting to third-party OPC servers, whether that could be Kepware or Matricon, or even devices that support OPC UA built in. It allows us to really get access to all of your industrial data, bring it into Ignition. We can work with any SQL database. That could be MySQL, Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle, Postgres, and more. We can interface with MQTT to either publish data or subscribe to data, or even be a broker. We can interface with other business systems. We typically do that through web services, REST or SOAP APIs. That could be other MES or ERP systems, could be maintenance management, could be really anything there. We can bring in LIMS devices, barcode scanners, and scales, and we can parse files and leverage that data. And of course, we can also integrate with the cloud, with cloud services, whether that's in AWS or Azure. A lot of functionality, a lot of places that Ignition can connect to. The idea is we can bring this data in, we can move it around, we can apply logic to it, we can historize it, alarm on it, and ultimately we can get that data to people. And that could be, as I said before, on any device, touch panels, TVs, PCs, mobile devices, phones or tablets. And really the idea is to quickly deploy Ignition, get connected to your sources of data, get connected to a database, build out your application, and then give people access to that. That's what we're going to see here today. We're going to show you a full example of how we can build a complete system from scratch, from installation to realizing the application with a lot of power in between, with taking advantage of the functionality that we have in Ignition. So we're going to do a simple, quick, easy install. And what's important to note is that you can go to our website and you can download Ignition, and you can easily get it installed and play around with all the functions and all the features that it offers. And we run it in a 2-hour trial period. So that's what I'm going to use today is our trial software. We can download and fully build out our system. And all you got to do is install it in one place and then instantly deploy that application to anybody within your organization. So I'm going to minimize this for a second. And if I look at this diagram I have up right now, this is an architecture, a standard architecture of ours. So what I'm going to be showing you is deploying Ignition to my laptop. And from there, I'm going to connect it to some PLCs. And so we can bring in some data and configure tags in Ignition. We're going to connect it to a database so we can log historical data, use the historian, use the alarm notification. And we're going to build out an application that we can then launch as a runtime. So we can see the data in an application and make that really, really easy to make available to our entire organization. So that's the idea. So first and foremost, what to mention is that you can go up to the top on the website, you can go to the downloads area and you can download Ignition. With it being fully cross-platform, there's installers for Windows, Linux, and Mac. You'll see all of those binaries on there. You can simply download that and get installed. Another method you could use is to use our Docker container. We have a Docker image that you can see at hub.docker.com, and it's super easy to get that up and running. And in fact, that's what I'm going to show here today. I'm going to use Docker and get it installed that way. So I don't have any containers running right now. What we're going to do is simply run this command here, which is going to run the Ignition 8.1.14 image and run on my machine, and basically we're getting access, we'll be able to get access to Ignition through HTTP over port 8088. That's the port that we're going to allow here. Again, I could do the installation from from that installer. It's very, very simple to do that as well. And it just takes a couple of minutes. It'll get installed. And then from there, you can open it up and start really configuring it a lot further. So I now have the container running. And how we access or how we work with Ignition is by going to our web browser. And so we can manage Ignition anywhere on our network by simply opening our browser and pointing it to that server. So if I open my browser, I can see here's on my local machine, I'm now connected to Ignition, and it wants me to select the version of Ignition to install. I want to use standard Ignition, but I want to mention that we have an Ignition Edge, which is a lightweight edition of Ignition for the edge of the network to provide functions at the edge of the network. We also have a Maker Edition, which is free for personal use, so non-commercial projects. So hobbyists, or if you want to use it for home automation, or students use it to really learn Ignition at their own pace, Maker Edition is a completely free version of Ignition where you can do all of that. So I'm going to use our standard Ignition offering here. Go ahead and choose that and accept our agreement, go next, and give it a root account. So I'm going to give it an admin user and a password. I'll finish setup, and now I'm going to start Ignition for the first time. And so that's it. That's really how simple it is to get Ignition up and running. And if you use the installer, it just takes a couple of seconds for the installation to happen. You're in the same area. And once this is done, it's going to point me to the Ignition Gateway webpage. And that's our entry into Ignition. From there, we can launch projects. From there, if we're a designer, we can go and launch a designer. We can build out our systems. And again, ultimately provide those applications to folks around the organization. And there we go. It's now ready. So Ignition's installed and configured. You see, that's how simple it is. And no matter where we want to deploy it, whether we deploy it to a site at a central server, on a physical server, whether we deploy it on an edge device, whether we deploy it to the cloud, or a combination thereof, it's simple to get Ignition out there. And when you first install it, though, there is a quick start that you can enable. And the quick start adds a sample application and configure some tags for you, gets you up and running so that you can play around with it, see some of the possibilities. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Rather than starting from scratch, I'll enable the quick start. I'll use my login there that I created, and it's now adding the application, configuring the devices, and adding some tags, and configuring history, and so on, and now it's ready to go. You'll also note on the right-hand side that we have a little menu to explore Ignition, where we can look at some videos from the university on how to get going. We also can get quick links to go and start building by launching a designer or opening that starter project. And that's what I'm going to do first. So I'm going to go down here to our View Projects area. And this came with a example project that we can launch. I'm going to go ahead and do that. So all that I need to do from a client perspective, if I'm somebody who wants to access the application, I can simply just put in this URL, which is the IP address to that server or the host name to that server. And then this is the direct link to this particular project. And you can see it's running in my browser. This is a complete pure web native HTML5 client. So it's super, super easy to get it out there. Anybody who has a modern browser, again, their phones or tablets or smart TVs, all we got to do is simply direct to that URL. And you'll see that as we go along here, we build out our own project, similar thing, get right to it. This quick start is great. It has an Ignition 101 section. It really shows you about some of the features of Perspective. This is our visualization module. And it shows you how some of the configuration would work and some of the examples of what you can do with that. It also has a couple of example applications. So shows you some real-time status control. We can see equipment and we can control it. Shows example looking at historical data. So we log that to a database where we can see some trends and see what's happening there. The example of alarming, so I can see alarms that are configured and the current state of those alarms. It shows an example of some data entry, just putting some data in there, as well as an example of an actual formatted report. We're going to show how all of this works today from scratch. We're going to see how these things are configured. But this quick start is a great way to explore all of this. And it really gives us a sense to see if all the types of, from a visualization standpoint, all the kinds of things that we can bring into our application. So whether it's from different charts, let's see here, our chart range selector, or look at different kinds of pie charts, or if I want to look at different kinds of display components, let's say I want to look at different LED displays, or I want to look at using icons, whatever it might be, it shows you examples of the types of visualization you could put together. Along with Perspective is completely mobile responsive. If we're opening this application up on our desktop, I'm going to see it in a certain way. And if I open it up on my phone or tablet, I want it to be optimized for that device. Again, we're going to show how this works, but this this layout area allows us to kind of see some of this in action. So for example, I open this component grid, I can, from here, if I were to get my browser to switch to a phone, as you can see, all those components are now presented in a different format, in a different organization. And this is now vertical, where if I go back to this response, if I go back to the full, you can see as I make the screen smaller, you can see that the screen adapts and it automatically moves things around and lets me optimize how I want that display to happen. So we can have one application that everybody can use that's fully mobile responsive, and that will work on all the different devices that we want to show it on. So it's really, really cool feature, and it's very, very simple to configure. Again, we're going to show this here today, from scratch, how all of this works. So again, the quick start is a great way to get started. Anybody can see how, and you can go in there and inspect how all these things are put together. That's the big part of it. Open the designer and see how this stuff works. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to do all my configuration from scratch. So we're going to show how this kind of project was built out. So now I'm going to be in my designer shoes. First, I was looking at it from a runtime perspective. Now I'm going to be the person in charge of designing an application. I'm going to go into the configuration section. And the first thing we'll do is get connected to some devices. So I'm going to go down here to our device connections, and we can utilize our device drivers. So if I create a new device, we have all sorts of drivers here from Allen Bradley to Siemens, BACnet, DMP3, Modbus, and more. And we can select the driver we're looking at and get it configured. So my first example, I have a Micrologix PLC I want to connect to. I'm going to choose that, go next. I'm going to call it Micrologix, and the IP address is 10.20.777. I'll go ahead and get that connected. And we should see it go from disconnected to connected. We're all good on that device. I'm going to connect to a Compact Logix PLC that I have. And that's the first driver there. I'm going to call it Compact Logix. And the IP address is 10.24.55. In my case, I'm going to go ahead and create that device. So now we get connected to a Compact Logix that has a lot of name tags and objects that we can use. We'll also connect to a couple simulators. If you don't have a real PLC and you want to play around with Ignition, we have a great programmable device simulator, and it allows you to simulate any kind of process data. So I'm going to create a dairy simulation. I'm going to go into our program, and I'm going to load a program that I happen to have created earlier for this. And you'll see it's pretty simple. These instructions here, let me load it. It just has these tags, these refrigeration tags from our discharge pressure to discharge temp, fill levels, things like that we can use. So I now have 4 PLC connections or 4 devices that we can work with, that we can create tags within Ignition. Now I want to go further than just being able to do real-time status control. I want to show logging historical data and also configuring alarms. So I'm going to do a couple other settings here in the gateway. There's a lot of different areas of configuration. I'm going to go into our alarming journal, and I'm going to set up alarm history. So I'm going to go to, and I want to go to a database. But in order to do that, I've got to have a database configured. And the sample gives us a SQLite database that we can use, but I want to connect to an external database, a real one. And for that, I'm going to go to MySQL. And first and foremost, what I'm going to do is install the MySQL driver real quick. And we'll have that going. And then now I'll go to my connections, and I'll create a connection to a MySQL database. So I'll call it MySQL. It's on my local machine. Actually, I'll just go to my IP address 192.168.1.8. And the database is called demo. And I'll put my credentials in to get connected. And that's it. I should have a valid connection. All you need is a blank database. We'll create all the tables. We'll manage and log all that data for you. So now I can go in and create my journal profile. I'm going to log alarm history to that database. So I'm going to call it journal and go to that MySQL database, get that configured. We could do the same thing for auditing. If you want to audit everything that's happening in Ignition, you can create an audit profile and simply go there, call it audit. I'll log to that MySQL database as well. And I can use that audit profile with various things in Ignition. Now, I also want to show some security aspects. We're going to log into our application, to our client. Rather than making it public, we're going to have people log in, and we want to tie into our federated identity provider. And so for that, I'm going to go over here to identity providers. I want to use my corporate credentials. So we're going to connect to an identity provider. In my case, I'm going to connect to Okta. So it's an OpenID Connect. I'm going to call it Okta. And that whatever IDP you're connect to, they have asked your IT department or whoever's in charge of that to give you the URL for the metadata. I'm going to import that. So that's now down here. And of course, I've got to put in my specific client ID and secret so that I can have this being connected. And I need to get the profile for this. So I'm going to use the profile scope. And that's it. I'm going to go ahead and save it. I now have a connection to OpenID or to Okta through OpenID Connect. And what I want to do though real quick is when the username comes back, the username is actually going to be a user, and the profile is going to be the name property. And we can map all sorts of things that come back from the identity provider to Ignition user. But now I'm ready to go. And if I wanted to test this out, I can go here and test a login, but we'll come back and do that in just a bit. So I set up now PLC connection, set up a database connection for logging history. I have a journal alarm history profile. I have an audit history profile. We're now really ready to start designing a project. And for that, we're going to get the designer. Up in the top right, there's a Get Designer link. And this is where we can download the designer launcher, and we can get connected to one or more Ignition servers that we may have. Now, I already have that installed on my machine, the launcher. So I'm going to go ahead and launch it. And I have a connection to my local Ignition here already. But you could simply add it to add a connection to any one of your servers you may have, again, by its IP address there. I go ahead and open the designer. The designer is included with the system. It supports concurrent development. We can have multiple people working on the same project at the same time, really being able to deliver a full solution, leveraging all the different functions and modules that Ignition can provide. And we'll show in a little bit later how we can extend that functionality. We can add a module in and use that to our advantage. So I'm going to log into my designer. I'm going to create a new project. There's the quick start that was already there. I'm going to create a brand new one though. I'm going to call it demo. And I will use our Okta identity provider. I'll use the MySQL database, and I'll start with one of our project templates that have some navigation and some screens already built out for me. So I'm going to go ahead and create that project. And now my designer is going to open up here. And for me, it's going to open up on my other monitor, and I'll move it over here. But this is, again, our single designer to do all of our development. We're going to create tags. We're going to create screens. We can set up history, alarming. We can set up reports, alarm notification pipelines, all sorts of things. Okay, so it opened up over here for us. That's great. A couple of things I want to do real quick. I'm going to set this doc here to be auto. This is something we need to update with our project. And I also, for mobile responsive design, there's this alarm screen. And this has a component that needs to be set to allow the mobile responsive enabled. So I just want to do that real quick. So don't worry about those pieces. But now I have my project ready to go. This is a skeleton project. This is something that's already been ready to go. So we could launch this and we can play around with it. And if I go up here to tools, I go launch session, and I go over here and you can see that there's a direct link to this project, and I'm in. There it is. There's the home section, charts, alarms. I can see the different screens that are provided by the skeleton project. Now you'll notice that I didn't have to log into that project. But I did connect to the Okta, and I want that to be a part of this. So what we're going to do is go back in the designer, and I'm going to set on a property the permission for this project. I'm going to make it where they have to be authenticated in order for us for us to see that project. I want to have more security on it. So if I save that and now come in to launch the session, you'll see that I have to log in. And when I do that, I'm going to continue. It's going to bring me over to Okta, and this has single sign-on already enabled for me, and it will send a push notification to my phone. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'm going to say, yep, that's me. I just got on my phone, and now it'll allow me to log in to that application, and I'm now this Ignition user up here, and I'm ready to go. So now I have a secure login to my application. And we're gonna customize. We're gonna build this out, make this, and do more with this project. But just can you give you a sense of the ease of development to deployment? If I go to my home screen here, I can see there's the label that I've got. I'm going to take these labels, I'm going to delete them, and I'm going to move this down a little bit here and just press save. You'll notice that when I press save, we push that out. I can have hundreds of people looking at this application at the same time. When we make those changes, whether it's from a development environment, push it to our production, or whether we make a change to production directly, those changes will propagate out. You don't have to worry about going to walk around to client stations. It's instantly available. So it's very simple. We're managing everything from that server. One place to install it, to back it up, to license it. One place to do all the management. And it really just makes it very, very easy to scale out some systems and again, to get data to more people. Now we're going to do something a little bit more fun. And that is we're going to create some tags, and we're going to build out some screens with this. So The first thing that I want to do is go over here to our tag browser, and I'm going to go and browse our devices, and you'll see that I got connected earlier to a MicroLogix. Yep, there's all the tags that come in the MicroLogix. There's my dairy refrigeration tags, and then there's my CompactLogix with all of their name tags that we can bring. And I'll come back to that CompactLogix in a moment. But I'm going to take all the refrigeration tags, bring them over here. I'm going to create a new folder. You can have any hierarchy you want. I'm going to call this folder MicroLogix. I'm going to take the N7, F8, and we're going to put those into the MicroLogix folder there. And then I'm going to anticipate, well, we'll just, actually, I'll just create these two here, and we're good to go. Press OK. Now these tags are configured. If I expand it, you'll see the live values of these tags. So if I look at the MicroLogix, there's all the tags from that PLC. And by default, we're pulling these things at a 1 second rate, but our designer's live. We can see what's happening before we go into the runtime. And really, I can start using these tags. I can put them on screens and historize them and so on. There's a lot of configuration that's here within these tags. So I can set up scaling, engineering units, alarming, scripting, history, all sorts of things that can be configured on that. So let's do something real quick. Let's take all these refrigeration tags, let's edit them, and let's log history. Turn on history, say yes, go into our MySQL database. Now these tags are being logged. In particular, though, these pump and valve, I'm going to set these to a discrete mode for the deadband because they're just steps, right? I want to, they're just going to 0, 1, 2 discrete values. So now these tags are logging. Simple to get those in the historian. Same thing as for doing alarms. It's very easy to configure alarms. I can go on the pump, configure an alarm. I can have one or more. I'm going to call this a fault, and this is going to be a pump fault. And I'm going to have this go into alarm when the value is equal to 2. So we'll get that configured. There I've got a pump fault. Let's go on my valve. We'll do the same thing on the valve. I'll call this one fault as well. But it will be what's displayed is the valve fault. And this will be when the value goes to 2. And again, we can put some notes in. Here are some notes for when that goes active, we can see those notes on the screen. So there we go. I've got alarms configured on these tags. And the simulation project, the Quick Start project, has a bunch of alarms configured too that we can use. Now these tags are all ready to go. Now the tags we built so far are just kind of straight tags from PLCs. It's possible that we can actually leverage UDTs and instances where we can build objects and use those objects and have them defined in one place. And that's what my ControlLogix PLC, it has that notion. If I look at the CompactLogix, if I expand that, I've got tanks in here. Every tank is the same, but I've got a whole bunch of different tanks. And I want to build that object. Well, one thing that's really cool is from using RSLogix 5000, we can export the program to an L5K file, and that basically has all those objects defined, and we can bring that into Ignition. There is a great resource that we have on our exchange called the Logix L5K parser, and this allows us to take that L5K file, parse it, and build those objects for us very quickly. So I'm gonna import that in from the exchange. The exchange is an online repository of things that people have built out that they've shared with the Ignition community. And so I can leverage what's been other people have created and used and bring it into my project. So I'm going to import this L5K parser, and we're going to go over to it. It makes it a little bit smaller here. And so I'm going to go and browse for my CompactLogix L5K file that I've already exported. And there we go. Here's all the UDT definitions. Here's all of our tags. So my PLC that I created was called CompactLogix. That was the name of it. I'm going to export all the UDTs. I'll save those UDTs. I'm going to then export only a certain set of tags. We're going to go to our tank 100, tank 101, 102, 103. We'll just do those 4 right now. I'll export these. You could export everything if you wanted to. But now I kind of created these JSON files, which are, we can import, export tags through any format we want, or through this JSON format. And so I'm going to create a folder over here. I'm going to call this tanks. And I'm going to go to my UDT definitions. I'll import a UDT, which is our UDTs that we got from this L5Ks, all the UDTs in my ControlLogix. There's my tank. And then I'm going to go to my tanks. I'm going to import the tags, which is all 4 of those tanks. And you can see that they are now working, pointing to those 4 tanks references in that PLC. And we just use that parser to help generate that very quickly. So I don't have to do that manually. The great thing about using UDT definition, if I go over here to the UDT and I say all these tags, I want to historize them, I do it on the definition in one place. We're going to go to our MySQL database, and that's it. Come back over here. All of these tags are now being logged. So let's expand it. You see those tags have a little history icon to the right. And any configuration we do in there, if I add an additional tank to this, so it'd be really easy for me if I wanted to create another one. I'll create tank 104, and I'll specify the parameter to be tank 104 in that PLC. And now I'm going to take 104, and all the history, everything set up for me is done. So very, very simple to build out our tags, add history, add alarming, have these values that we can bring on the screens. So that brings me to the next piece that I want to do is I want to build a real-time status control screen. I want to show this data out there for people. So on this home screen, we'll use our home screen as our real-time status control screen. I can take these tags, I'm gonna go to refrigeration for this. I'm gonna take this fill level tag, drag it over here as a cylindrical tank. Now we could take tags and we could drag it on the screen as different components. This helps us get started with perspective very quickly, building out our screens. So we could also go over here to the right in our components list. So I can search for a label and put a label next to this. And maybe I'm gonna call this discharge temperature. And I'll make it a little bit bigger here. And we'll just put it these side by side. And I'll take these two things, I'll duplicate them. I'm just doing quick duplication. And on here, I'll call this one inlet temperature. I'll call this one suction temperature. And what we could do is simply take our tag, drag it over to the LED for the inlet, drag it over for the LED for the suction pressure. Those are all set up. Take these two, drag them over, duplicate them, put them over here. Line these back up. And we'll now say this is discharge pressure. And then we'll do this one as inlet pressure. Same thing. I'll take the pressure tag and drag it over there, and the pressure inlet, drag it over there. And I've just now built out that pretty quickly. I got my tank. I want more. I want to see the process though, like a little PNID. So we have symbols that in perspective we can use. I'm gonna take a pump, put a pump on the screen, and I don't want to see the actual value at the bottom of there. I just want to see the pumps. I'm gonna hide that value. Do the same thing for a valve. I'm gonna put a valve on here, and I don't want to see that value at the bottom either. And then I'm gonna put a vessel to the right, make the vessel a little bit bigger. And I want to hook all these things together, right? And hook them up to the tag. So pump, I'm gonna take my pump tag, drag it over to the state. The state is a string, and the pump is an integer, 0, 1, 2. So I want to map that from a number to that state. So 0, 1, 2. 0 is going to be stopped, 1 is going to be running, and 2 is going to be, in my case, faulted. So I have that state now set up on the pump. I'm going to copy that same binding over to my valve state, paste that binding. I'm going to just change tag now. Let's change that to valve so we can kind of rapidly create this out. And then on the vessel, I want that to be linked to the tag. So I'm gonna take the mixer level and drag it over to the value. So I have that vessel set up. And a lot of times you want to use some high performance HMI techniques. We have a lot of different components for high performance HMI. I'm not necessarily building the screen that way, but it's easy to do. I'm just gonna take this moving analog indicator, make it a little bit smaller here, put it to the right of that vessel. And I'm going to take that mixer level, drag it over to the process value, and I'll set my desired high to 80 and my desired low to 20. So now it's within the range that I want it to be in. And so there we go. So I've got these different components. I want to hook them up with pipes. So we have a great piping tool built into perspective, and so I can take this tank, drag this pipe here, and just hook it up to that pump, drag it over, hook it up to our valve, and then from the valve, I'm going to drag it over to our vessel. And there we go. I now have the little process screen set up, ready to go, and we could deploy this out. So let's go ahead and move it down here, and I'll bring over my my application again so we can see this. Let's save it, and there you go. Now I've got that update on the screen. Now all this is control or status right now. You probably want to do control as well. And so we're going to do something simple, and we're going to put a multi-state button. here, like a handoff auto button. I'll make it a row here, go like this. And the states are going to be 2 is faulted. I'm going to change the states. So I'm just modifying these properties to reflect what I want them to be. So 0 is stopped and 1 is running. And what we're going to do is, of course, link them up to their proper tags. So I'm going to link this to the pump tag, just drag it over to the control property, to the indicator property. I'll make that then bidirectional so we can write back. And I'll do the same thing over here, just duplicate it for the valve. And we're going to just drag the valve over to the same properties, and I'll make that bidirectional. So now I've got control on here. So if I go back to my application, I can turn this into a fault, which would make it go into a alarm condition. I can go back to stopped. We can go this one to running. You can see changing those states within this very easily. So we can do real-time status and control with it. Now we have already set up alarms. We've set up history, and you'll notice that at the top right, I have this little status. There's 1 alarm active right now. If I were to make this valve go into a fault state, I should have 2 alarms active. There it is. If I go to my alarm screen, I can see there's my valve fault, and I can go look at the details of that with the notes that are there. See everything about that valve fault that's happening. It's a medium priority alarm. Low priority alarm there. But if I want to click on it and then go down and acknowledge it, I can acknowledge it. We can see what's happening. And all of that is being historized as well. We can see all these states. We know what's happening with these alarms. We'll come back to that in just a bit here. So we also have logged history. So I go to our charts and I can see that in the MySQL database, I have all of my tanks that are logging all of that data. And here I've got my other values that are being logged. So I can take this fill level, mixer level, and I'll add these. I'll take that, add the mixer, and I'll add the pump. We'll put them over here, and I'll look at the last 8 minutes. I don't have that much data logged so far. So there we go. But then maybe I want to put have a second plot, so that will add that plot to it, and we'll make the first one 3 times the weight. So what I'm going to do is make that second plot. We're going to put the pump into plot 1, and we're going to make it a step because that is what it is, right? It's a discrete value. And so now I'm configuring this. So there I've got, there I've got my trends, and I can see things. I can zoom in. I can add annotations to charts, right? We can see what the values are at given times. We can do ranges where we can see statistics on the ranges. We can easily go in and add annotations like what happened here, some issue. And we can, that gets stored historically for that history. So really simple. You see all these things are really, really powerful, really easy to get configured there. Now, I've got a full system built out, real-time status control, history, and alarming. But I want to make sure that this is mobile friendly. And if I'm on a mobile device, that I can see this data. And this screen here, this is not too busy, but I've seen a lot of process screens that are quite detailed. And on a mobile device, you want to be able to make it, show better, right? And show in a different form. And so that's what I want to do now, is show you how we can do some mobile responsive design very, very easily within this. And we'll show the effect afterwards, what it looks like in desktop form and what it looks like in a mobile form. And so I'm going to take this, everything we've done with this is great. I'm going to use it. But now I'm going to add, in Ignition, we have, in Perspective, we have various containers. And the containers are the different ways that we can do layouts. And there's a container type we have called breakpoint. And the breakpoint allows us to specify a size, which by default is 640 here. And when I'm on the large size, I want it to be this container here, which is our process. If I'm on the small size, though, I want it to be a different form. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another screen or another template that I can use multiple times. So I'm going to show the idea of parameterization. Much like UDTs and tags, I'm going to show parameterization on our screens. I'm going to call this process value, and it's going to be a certain layout, and we'll make this height here 40. And what this is going to do is I'm going to do it. It's going to be a row, and I'm going to have some parameters we pass into it. So I'm going to have a parameter for the label. So like, for example, if it was mixer level, and then have a parameter for which tag I want to point to. I want to do indirection on the tag pass. So let's say I take this mixer level, I copy that path, and I put it over here to the tag path. I want to show a label on the screen first that is going to be certain size, but it's going to reference, I'm going to link that label, the text, to the label that's being passed in. So it'll be mixer level. I'm going to put an LED display that is going to be showing the value of this. So I want that to be 140 pixels there. And I'm going to bind the value to a tag, but I'm going to do indirection. Indirection allows us to use parameters to point to various tags so we can take advantage of what we have. And so I'm going to point to or bring in the tag path that's passed in which case right now it's going to link to that mixer value. And then lastly, we're going to do is add a spark line chart, which is a nice way to see history of a particular pen. And we're going to, oops, change this to an object. Okay, so this is going to allow me to specify the path that I want to bring in. So you'll see I'm going to actually have it look at history of this. I'm going to bind the points of the spark line to tag history and look at the last 10 minutes of data. I'm going to pull it every 60 seconds. I want it to update every 60 seconds, and I want it to be referenced the tags that I'm passing in there, which in this case is just one tag. But there we go. I now have this row set up. Now, I can point this template to any tag and any label that I want, and it would show that data. The reason I went through that trouble is that when I'm on the small display, I want to be able to show the data in different form. So we're going to take a flex repeater that we have, and I'm going to use that process value, and we're going to add a couple instances here. So I'm going to sync these params. There's my mixer level. I'm going to duplicate that a couple of times, and we're going to get mixer level. We're going to get fill level, and I'm going to take the fill level tag, copy that path, put it over here. We're going to do discharge temperature and get the discharge temperature, copy that path over here. And then I'll get the, how about the inlet temperature, call it inlet, and then we'll duplicate one more, why not? And this is gonna be the suction temperature. And we'll get that over there. So what you're not seeing right now is they're all there, but I need to do this as a column. And then I'm gonna put a little bit of a padding between them. So right in between, right below it, I'll put some padding. And so now I've got this view. So I'm just showing the process values in a different form. If I come back and look at my application, if I am on a mobile device, here I'm on a desktop, and I can see this screen in the desktop form. If I go to a mobile device, you're going to see that it switches to a different view of that. And now I can see this as vertical form. I get this data, and I could add as much as this as I want. We could shrink down the process value too, the PNID, but ultimately I might want to see it in a different form like this. So you have lots of options for for how you could do mobile responsive design, and every part of the application now is done that way. Here's my chart. I can go in, select a tag that I'm interested in, add it, and see that data easily, right? If I look at the last 8 minutes, there we go. If I want to go to my alarms it's all the cards for all the alarms that are happening. So it's very, now very easy no matter where I'm at to look at this data. All right, so I have a couple more things that I want to show. We did create this tank, these tanks here, and what I want to show is same kind of thing. If I build a tank template, so basically I'm going to have a property for, again, the tag path, which is going to be a reference to like one of our tanks. I'm going to build something, make the tank a little bit smaller here. I'm going to add a style around this. I'll set the background of this to white, and I'll make a border, solid border around it, and we'll do it with nice gray border, and we'll do a radius around there. So it's nice rounded corners. And what we're going to do is put a label here at the top, and I want the label to show which tank I'm referencing. And actually, in the tank object, I have a tank number I can use. So I'm going to bind this to a tag indirectly. I'm going to use the tag path I'm passing in, and I'm going to go to the tank num tag that's inside of it. I'm going to add a transform, and I'm going to map that or be able to put tank number and then whatever that tank number actually happens to be, so tank 100. So I'm going to go and bring in a cylindrical tank, and we're going to have that show the value. So I'll be binding the value of this to tag indirectly again, and we're going to choose now inside of there the level PV tag. If I can type here, there we go, level PV. So it's going to show the level, and then maybe I want to have an LED display that's going to show the temperature. So I'm going to bind that one more time, one more binding to indirect, and we're going to choose that. Again, the tag path passed in, and we're going to go to temp PV. Okay, so to make this look a little better, let's put a little bit of let's put a label right above here that shows temperature. All right, so there's my template that I built out. And what's cool about this is I made a UDT, a tank UDT, and I've got bunch of them. I can easily say, hey, you know what? I want to, that UDT is special. So at tank one, I can drag and drop, onto a screen, a tank, and it would know that it would create, this is the object I want to create from that. So there we go. I set this up to drop a UDT on a screen. So let me just create another screen here, call it tanks. And you'll see real easily, I can just drag a tank on the screen and boom, there we go, tank 100, tank 101. And it's super easy to get that going, and we can leverage these UDTs further. Now, just like with anything, with the Exchange, we have all sorts of power up there. There's a great resource we have on the Exchange called the Alarm Analysis Dashboard. So I've logged a lot of my alarms now to the database, and I want to see analysis of that. So I'm going to go in my designer. I'm going to import the Alarm Analysis resource. And what we're going to do then is I'm going to kind of make a new page for this. We're going to call this analysis. And I'm going to just drag that one that came from the Exchange right on the screen. And it's ready to go. We'll call this alarm analysis. And I'll have this be analytics for the icon. And there we go. And well, maybe I'll do a little bit of a padding in here as well, just so that it's not scrunched up to the edge. And so then now what we'll do is add it to our menu navigation. We have menu navigation in our application. I'm going to add a new menu item, and this is going to be /analysis. And we'll go alarm analysis, and we'll make the icon be the analytic one. Analytics. There we go. So I've got that there. Now, I also want to have this be URL friendly. So I'm going to create a URL for that analysis screen as well, which is that one. And so now I'm ready to go. I've just added a new screen to my application. Let's go back into it. And over here, you see there's a new one called Alarm Analysis. Click on that, and now I get my alarm history analysis of what's going on there. And it would be super easy then to also be able to historize this, notify people when these alarms occur. I'm seeing how the alarms are working. I want to notify someone through email, SMS, or voice when this happens. And so I want to connect it up. And in my case, let's do alarm or email, excuse me. So we're going to go and get that configured. So we can go into our configuration section. And I'm going to set up an alarm notification profile. So I'm going to create a new one. We're going to do email. There's email, SMS, and voice. I'm just going to do email. And we're going to go, I have an email server that I'm going to go to, mail, and 587. I have my own account here that I'm going to use for an SMTP server. And that's it. I'm going to choose our audit profile that we got this. We can audit all of that's happening through there. So I got email set up. Now what we do is we have to have users that we can send an email to. So I'm going to go and add a user to this. And this is going to be, it'll be Travis. And I'm going to put an email address in here, which is the ignition demo@mailinator.com. I want to send it to that. So I've added my user. Then I can go over here and add an on-call roster. So we're gonna have a roster that can send to these two certain people on certain conditions. So I'm gonna go manage this one. I'm gonna put Travis in that roster. And the last thing we got to do is simply figure out how we want to notify, how we want to set that up. So I'm going to create a pipeline, and that's going to be called my alarm pipeline or email pipeline. And I'll put a notification block in there, quick and easy. We're going to notify through email, and it's going to come from alarms at ia.io, and we're going to have it go to my roster. And there we go. That's simple. Then on a particular tag, like my pump tag, let's say my pump alarm that I have, I'm going to tell that alarm, you know what? I want you to go into the email pipeline when it becomes active and notify that out. So let's do that. Let's send it. And that's it. So now if I come over to my application, let me log back into this one, send my push. I have over here Mailinator. I'm looking at that ignition demo email. So if I were to go and set my pump to a faulted state there in my case, then that is going to be sent out. And there we go. There's ignition alarm notification. And I can see that at this time, alarm fault, pump fault transition to active. You can change what you want that message to be, but that is as easy as it is to get notification out there. But I may want to do more than that. Maybe I want to get data to the cloud. I want to leverage that data further. All the tags we have set up, all that data, I want to bring it to the cloud. That's also really simple to do. So we can leverage MQTT for that. If you remember the module stack that I showed earlier, we can plug in modules, add more functionality. And that's what we're going to do here. We're going to go to modules, and we're going to add and install a module, and we're going to choose our MQTT transmission module. This module allows us to take data and publish it to an MQTT broker. And I have a broker and an ignition application in the cloud already set up for this. So you see over here, I've got this tag dashboard project. This is another Exchange resource we have called the Perspective Tag Dashboard. And it is just one that just allows us to see the tags that are there. And right now, I don't have anything configured with MQTT. There's nothing in there yet. But what we're going to do is come to our local ignition. MQTT transmission is now up and installed. I'm going to go to settings for this, and I'm going to go to servers. I would point it to my MQTT broker. So I'm going to point it securely using SSL to my cloud broker. And that's it. Come down here, save changes, and it should get connected. We should see this ready to go here, one of one. But it created an example transmitter. Instead of doing this, some example MQTT tags, I'm going to use all the tags we have configured. Everything that's in our system, all of our tags in our default provider, I'm going to publish that up. And I'm going to do that. I want it to go to be represented from inductive automation, demo node, and my demo device. And I'm going to save that. So now all these tags are now being published up to the cloud. And it's now available in that dashboard. So if I come over here to my dashboard and look at my MQTT engine, go to Edge nodes, I have the inductive automation group, demo node, there's my demo device. There are all of my tags that are now being published up. Simple as that. I just have to point it to my cloud broker, and I'm now looking at all this data. It's automatically discovered and usable. And it's also writable. If I want to go edit this and change this to a value of 1, I can do that. And you'll see that that gets reflected back here. My pump is 1. If I go set it to back to stopped, but my tag dashboard, you'll see that it's now 0, right? Set it to faulted. You're going to see it go back to a value of 2. Simple as that. We now have this data represented in the cloud. We could leverage that a lot further. If we want to go straight into AWS or Azure, we can do the same thing in various services that are there. So hopefully you found this, very a good informational demo of what's possible. If you guys want to play around with this cloud dashboard, you can actually visit this QR code. I'll leave it up here just for a second. You can leave it up here and you can go straight to that dashboard, see that Perspective project, and you can look at all the data that's being published from my machine up to the cloud and even interface with some of those values. So again, just scan that QR code on your phone, or if you want to do it on your browser, go into that URL right there. You can get right to that project that we have running in the cloud and see all the stuff that we just configured here today that's being brought up there. I didn't bring the screens up there, just a generic tag dashboard, but I could have easily brought those screens up there as well and used that. All right, so I'm now gonna come back over here. So again, thank you very much for watching the demo. Hopefully it was insightful for you. We do have a lot of other great resources that you can go and visit. There's a lot of capabilities in Ignition. There's more that's possible. You can go to our Inductive University to learn all about Ignition. There's over 600 videos on how to do things in the product, from simple to more complex. There is the Ignition Exchange, which I leveraged today to bring in some resources that added more power to my project. You can visit that and see all the resources that are up there that people have contributed. You can also upload your resources for your own private use that you've developed, or for your organization that you've developed in Ignition. We have a great user manual, great documentation. You can learn more about Ignition. There's an awesome online forum where you can go ask questions and talk to peers in the community, as well as we have an ideas forum where you can contribute and provide us feedback of what you'd like to see in the product, different features you'd like to see added from there. We're now going to go to our Q&A section. Question here is from John. It says, does Ignition support Phoenix Contact RFC 430? So Ignition's driver set is the Allen Bradley Ethernet suite, DMP3, Modbus, BACnet, Omron NJ, Omron CJ, Modbus TCP, Modbus RTU over TCP, and we have a couple specific oil and gas drivers and a TCP driver. So there's not a specific Phoenix Contact driver. However, if that device supports Modbus, of course, we can connect to it. Otherwise, we might have to look at a third-party OPC server for access to that data. Another question here, is it possible to use MQTT with a service bus queue like RabbitMQ or Kafka? Yes, there are ways you could do that. There are services that can go from MQTT and convert it over to other, like Kafka. There's like Apache NiFi, various systems like that allow you to go around and do those kind of things. Another question is, does Ignition support IEC 61850? That's a great question, because we're actually in the middle of development of that driver right now. We're actually developing two new drivers, a Mitsubishi Melsec driver and an IEC 61850 driver that we're looking at going into beta in this quarter, in Q1 of this year. So we are very close to getting that driver out there for people to play around with. Let's see, there are some very specific questions around how some of the configuration works, and I'll point out in general that if you guys, you can reach out to our team, the sales engineering team, if you'd like any deep dives, you want to get into deep dives of the product, you want to look at how things are done, talk best practices, architecture, our team is here to help you. So please reach out to your sales rep, or if you don't have one, reach out to Industrial Automation. We'll get one assigned so that we can get on the phone and help you with all of your questions that you may have. Okay, our question here is Ignition SCADA software limited to process control or power systems as like complex power applications for distribution network? No, so Ignition is not limited to any specific vertical. It is a product that that crosses all verticals, has lots of functionality in there from the different modules we provide. There's just so much that Ignition can do for you. And obviously SCADA is a big part of it, but you could build really any kind of industrial application that you'd like. But it is definitely not limited. We have good case studies and examples out there from all sorts of industries. One more question here says, does Ignition SCADA and data point limitations or number of points can be configured? So that's a great question. The license does not limit you in any way. Ignition's completely unencumbered, unlicensed, or unlimited. It gives you as many tag screens, clients as you want. So that means that if you install Ignition on a big beefy server, you can actually get a lot more configured on there, more tags and more stuff than if you install it on a Raspberry Pi, as example, right? So the more beefy the server, the more you could do there. Now we can also scale out systems, that are really, really large, because there is limitation on a single piece of hardware of how much we can do. There's only so much you can configure on one computer. But if you have a big system, we can separate out our I/O, our backend from the front end. We can scale this out horizontally. We have systems out there with 8 million tags and thousands of people looking at data that's spread across a few different Ignition servers rather than running on just a single one. But again, when you buy a license for Ignition, you're buying it for the modules that you need on there. So you can have servers specific to certain kind of functionality. So that's a great question. We could talk more about that if you have more questions on that with architecture discussions. Well, I apologize I was not able to get to all the questions that were here today. But thank you so much for coming. Before I go, I want to let everybody know that we are now taking project submissions for the Ignition Community Conference 2022 Discover Gallery. This is the gallery that showcases various projects out there that you have built, and all the submissions are due by April 30th. So again, the submissions are due by April 30th. The form will be available really soon, but mark that day on the calendar because you want to get yourself ready and get permission from your customer, to be able to show your project, and you have an opportunity to win the coveted award from the Discover Gallery. So yeah, the Firebrand Award winners. So definitely check it out. You can also go to the website and check out the previous year winners as well. If you have any questions about it, you can email us at icc@inductiveautomation.com. I also want to mention that our next webinar is on February 24th. It's going to be about digital transformation. That is a big trend, a big theme. So be sure to register and watch that in a couple of weeks. Till then, stay connected to us by following us on social media and subscribing to our weekly newsfeed and monthly podcasts. Bye for now. Thank you so much for being here. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.